Welcome to Children's Stories with Woodsy. Today we're reading a Dirty Bertie book. This one's called Spell, and it's by David Roberts and Alan MacDonald. Chapter 1. Miss Boot handed back Class 3's history work. She faced them with an icy glare. "Some of you seem to have learned nothing at all," she barked. "And the standard of spelling in this class is a disgrace." Her eyes fixed on Bertie, who was balancing a pencil on his nose. It fell off. "Luckily, there is a chance for a few of you to shine. In 2 weeks' time, it's the Inter-Schools Junior Spelling Bee. Who can tell me what a spelling bee is?" Darren's hand went up. "Is it a bee that's dead clever, miss?" he said. "No, Darren," snapped Miss Boot. "It's a competition, boy. A competition to find the Junior Spelling Bee champion. Who of you would like to be a champion?" Almost every hand shot into the air. Bertie pulled a face. Why did schools always give out prizes for things he couldn't do? What about prizes for annoying teachers or burping the alphabet? "So I will be choosing 2 lucky children who—" Miss Boot droned on and on. Bertie stopped listening. He looked up at the cracks in the ceiling, wondering how soon it would be until it fell down. "So, as a special treat, we are going to have a spelling test," said Miss Boot. Bertie sat up in wild panic. Not a spelling test. Last time he'd come bottom of the class. Miss Boot had sent a note home to his parents who'd threatened to stop his pocket money if he didn't improve. He had to think of a way to get a good mark. 10 minutes later he stared gloomily at his answer sheet. He'd guessed most of the answers, though maybe 1 or 2 were wrong. Did Stupid have 1 O or 2? He glanced around the class. Eugene was checking his work. Darren was doodling. Noel Nick sat back wearing a smug grin. Trust Smarty Pants to know all the answers, thought Bertie. Wait a minute. He had just had a brilliant idea. "Right," barked Miss Boot. "Write your names on your papers and pass them forward." "Hey, Nick," hissed Bertie. "Isn't that your mitten on the floor?" "Where?" Nick turned pink. Nick's mum always made him wear mittens to school. "Under your chair," said Bertie. Nick ducked down to look. Bertie swiped Nick's answer sheet. Quick as a flash, Bertie wrote his name on it and scrawled Nicholas on his own. There, that should do it. He passed both papers forward just in time. "There's nothing there. Hey, where's my spelling test?" squawked Nick. "Oh, it's okay. I handed it in," smiled Bertie. "But I didn't write my name on it." "Don't worry. I did it for you," said Bertie. Nick frowned. Bertie wasn't normally so helpful. What was he up to? After break, Class 3 trooped back inside. Miss Boot was waiting for them. "I've marked your spelling tests and I am not impressed. No, I am not impressed at all, class. Some of you can't even spell your own name. However, I'm pleased to say that 2 of you got very high marks." Noel Nick beamed. He was bound to come top. "Donna, you scored 17 out of 20. Excellent work. But one of the class scored full marks. And that person was... Bertie." Everyone gasped and turned their heads. "Bertie?" howled Nick in disgust. "Thank you, Nicholas," said Miss Boot. "But miss, I got them all—" "That'll do, Nicholas," thundered Miss Boot. "As it happens, you came bottom of the class. You could learn a lot from Bertie's hard work." Bertie turned and stuck out his tongue. Miss Boot went on. "So, we have 2 clear winners, Donna and Bertie. They will be entering the Junior Spelling Bee next week. Bertie almost choked. What? Him in the spelling bee? Miss Boot had to be kidding. When was this decided? But miss, he spluttered, I can't. Nonsense. Spelling's bad for me. I come out in a rash, said Bertie. Don't be ridiculous. You came top of the class, boy. So I shall be expecting great things from you. Is that clear, Bertie? Bertie nodded miserably. He'd been in some tight spots before, but how on earth was he going to get out of this one? Chapter 2. That evening, over supper, Bertie broke the terrible news to his parents. A spelling bee, frowned Dad. But don't you need to be good at spelling, boy? Yes, moaned Bertie. So how come they picked you then? Grinned Susie. I don't know. It was a mistake. He could hardly explain that he'd cheated in the spelling test. Well, your spelling must have improved a lot. That's brilliant, Bertie, said Mum. But I can't do the spelling bee. It will be a disaster, wailed Bertie. Of course it won't. Just do your best. You don't understand. I'm rubbish at spelling. Well, Miss Boot doesn't think so, does she, boy? Anyway, you just have to learn the words. I can't learn them all. There's millions. We'll help you. We'll make a list of 20 spellings every night for you to learn. Bertie gaped. 20 spellings every night? That would take him forever. He would have to give up watching TV and eating meals. In any case, he didn't need more spellings. He got enough of it at school. It was all Noel Nick's fault. If he wasn't such a clever clogs, none of this would have happened. The day of the spelling bee arrived. Bertie found himself with all the other contestants in a room off St. Mildred's School Hall. Already the hall was filling up with excited school parties. Bertie wished he was sitting in the audience with his friends. His opponents all looked like nerds and brainiacs. They probably went over spellings in their sleep. Are you okay, Bertie? Asked Donna. You don't look well. I'm fine. It's only a spelling contest. I mean, who cares, right? Miss Boot, said Donna. Still, as long as we don't go out in the first round, hey? How do you mean? Don't you know? If you get one word wrong, you're out. Out? Said Bertie. No clues or second chances? Donna shook her head. That's the rules. One mistake and you're dead. Bertie gulped. Spelling bees were brutal. What if he went out in the first round? Miss Boot would blow a fuse. He'd be doing spelling tests for the rest of his life. Someone tapped him on the shoulder. Oh, it's only me, Bertie, said Eugene. Just came to wish you luck. Bertie pulled him to one side. Eugene, you've got to help me out of this, he begged. I can't go out there. I'll look like an idiot. You are an idiot, grinned Eugene. Bertie dragged him to the boys' toilets and closed the door behind them. Listen, I've got to tell you something. I cheated in the spelling test. I swapped papers with Noel Nick. You didn't, gasped Eugene. Does Miss Boot know? Of course she doesn't know. That's why she picked me for this, moaned Bertie. Well, what are you going to do? You're good at spelling, said Bertie desperately. You'll have to help me. Me? Cried Eugene. I can't. I'll be in the audience. Exactly. No one will know. You don't even have to speak. Just give me a clue. Like what? Bertie scratched his head. You know, if the letter's I, then point to your eye. But what if the letter's P? I don't know. You'll think of something, cried Bertie. Eugene looked worried. It'll never work. Miss Boot will be watching. What if we get caught? We won't. Please, Eugene. You're my only hope. Chapter 3. The contestants sat on the stage with numbers pinned to their chests. Bertie was wearing number 13. He stared out at the audience nervously. Miss Boot was in the third row. Noel Nick sat along from her, pulling faces at him. Bertie spotted Eugene next to Darren a few rows back. The girl wearing number 1 made the long walk to the microphone. She stood, trembling in the spotlight. The reader's voice boomed out, giving her a word to spell. Cloudy. As in, it was a cloudy sky. Cloudy. The girl let out a faint squeak. She screwed her eyes up tight. C-L, she began. She fell silent. then gabbled the rest. O-W-D-Y, C-L-O-W-D-Y, cloudy. There was a deathly silence. I'm sorry, boomed the reader. That is not correct. Thank you for taking part. Next. The girl fled from the stage, sobbing. Bertie watched the other children plod to the front, one by one. Suddenly, Donna nudged him. Yikes! He was next! He stumbled out to the microphone, tripping on a wire and bumping into it. The audience giggled. Bertie rubbed his head. Your word is dripping, boomed the reader, as in, the tap was dripping. Bertie groaned. He was hoping for something easy like dog or log. He stared at Eugene, who had turned red and sunk down in his seat. D! Yelled Bertie, deafening the front row. Eugene gave him a small nod. Oh, said Bertie. Eugene winked an eye. I, cried Bertie. D-R-I. What next? His mind had gone blank. Eugene rolled his eyes, then screwed up his face and started to bounce up and down in his seat. Bonkers, cried Bertie. I'm sorry, said the reader. Bertie shook his head. Bonkers wasn't a letter. What on earth was Eugene trying to say? He was jiggling about as if he was in pain or needed the loo. That's it, thought Bertie. Loo, poo, wee, whittle, pee-pee. Yes, pee-pee. D-R-I-P-P, said Bertie. Almost there. He could do this. I-N-G? Dripping? Correct. The audience clapped. Bertie almost fainted with relief. Miss Boots mopped her face. Bertie bowed, clonking the microphone again, then marched back to his place. Spelling wasn't so tough. Actually, he was pretty good at it. With a bit of help from Eugene, he might even win. Chapter 4. After the interval, 4 children came back on stage for the final round. Donna had gone out, but to everyone's amazement, Bertie was still there. He had spelled 10 words correctly, even vegetable, a word he never used. Now it was him against the other 3. One of them would be Junior Spelling Bee champion. Bertie glanced at the silver trophy sitting to one side. He imagined Noel Nick's face when he showed it off in assembly. Miss Boot was edging along a row to get to her seat. Wait a minute, she'd moved. She was sitting down next to Eugene. Bertie went cold. This was terrible. How was Eugene meant to help him now, with Miss Boot in the next seat? The final round began. Giles, Harriet, and Yuko all spelt their words correctly. Then it was Bertie's turn. He dragged himself to the microphone. He gazed out at the rows of faces, feeling dizzy. Miss Boot was watching him like a hawk. Please, please let it be something easy, he prayed. Unusual, boomed the reader. Bertie's mouth fell open. Unusual? What kind of word was that? It had about 1 million letters in it. He looked to Eugene for help, but Eugene shook his head. Bertie was on his own. Think, what's the first letter of unusual? U? He mumbled. Pardon? Said the reader. Can you speak up, please? Bertie wiped the sweat from his brow. Maybe he could pretend to pass out. I'll have to hurry you, said the reader. Bertie took a deep breath. There was nothing for it. He'd have to take a guess. U-N, he began. O-J-A-L? Unusual? I'm sorry, that's not correct, said the reader. Miss Boot groaned and buried her head in her hands. Bertie sighed. He'd given it his best shot. He took a bow, headbutting the microphone again. Afterwards, Donna and Bertie joined the rest of their class in the hall. Well done, Donna. You did ever so well. What about me? Said Bertie. I got to the final round. Yes, indeed you did, Bertie. Nicholas pointed out to me that you kept looking at Eugene. Did I? Said Bertie, turning pink. Yes, you did. Every time you were stuck. Mumbled Bertie. That's why I moved seats at the interval. Then strangely, your spelling went to pieces. I wonder why that was,
Just bad luck, I suppose,
muttered Bertie. Miss Boot narrowed her eyes.
Well, if I find out that you were cheating, Bertie, you will find yourself in very hot water.
She turned and stormed off. Bertie gulped. He just hoped his secret was safe with Eugene. Otherwise, it spelt Trouble. And that spells trouble. And that's the end. Thank you so much for listening, and please come back soon for another children's story with Woodsy. Bye for now.